All right, here we go. So my name is Kevin Lindo, everybody. Athlete and Coach Services Coordinator for PacificSport Vancouver Island. This is episode 3 in our Elevate speaker series. Our Elevates are trying to elevate your performance with education in the community. This is one way we try to service the high performance community in sport. But of course, there's lots of overlap between being a parent, being a coach, being a high performance athlete, and grassroots as well, and just being active. So we hope you take something from this. If you've got any questions, hit us up at the end, and we'll throw it out there for a bit of Q&A. I'm super excited to have my good friend Dr. Abe Avender on here. Does a lot in the community, has a wicked business and what they do, and I'm going to let him talk. Welcome, Abe, to the webinar this week.
Right on. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So why don't you just give us a bit of a lowdown on basically what your title is and what you do right now, and maybe a little bit about your journey to where you are.
Sure. I'm a Nanaimo boy that grew up here, and then I spent a year at Mount Spina College at the time, and then moved on to Victoria, to UVic, to do my undergrad in kinesiology, and then from there I didn't know if 9 years in a row of school was going to do it for me. So I took a year and went to Australia and threw a backpack on and did that. And then I had applied for chiropractic schools before I left. And it was funny that my chiro journey is an interesting one, because I don't think I had ever seen one in my whole life until my third year of university, where my hip was bugging me, and I went and saw someone, or one of my assistant coaches told me that he knew this great chiro, and I was like, oh, I think chiros aren't they just weird and do crazy stuff? And he said, no, this guy's great. And so I saw the Dr. Grimes actually in Victoria, and he helped me a ton with my hip. And I remember phoning home and telling my mom and dad, I think I was kind of keen on the medical side. And I said, I think I might go into chiro. My dad said, so you're doing drugs now? And I said, no, I'm definitely not doing drugs, Dad, but I think I like this field, and I think I like the more movement-based rehab function performance side to it. So I kind of stepped into that or the interest of it. And yeah, I applied for schools before I left for Australia, and I was down there for a while. And actually it was a nice way to know that I wanted to go back to school, because I finished up my travels and was really excited to get into school. So I spent 4 and a bit years out in Toronto getting my Doctor of Chiropractic, and which I did a lot of sport-based rehab and conditioning and every sort of thing I could stick my head into treatment-wise and things like that. So I decided that I might want to go down to the States and try to work with sport down there and that kind of thing, just because there's so much opportunity. But then part of me was like, I'd love to get back to the island, and I knew Nanaimo when I left didn't have a ton of that high performance side to sport therapy and rehab and conditioning. And I had good connections with being home. And so I came back, and it's been almost 13 years now of back, and we opened up Island Optimal Health and Performance, and we've grown into 2 clinics and a gym and a couple yoga studios. And yeah, and I always say every day I'm pretty lucky, because I still love what I do, and it's fun to work with everybody. From my youngest ever was a 4-day-older, and my oldest was a 98-year-old. That was one of the neatest people I've ever met. So, and everything in between, from national team, professional athletes to, yeah, every sort of walk of life. I'm happy to help anybody, kind of thing.
Thanks, Abe. Yeah, great story. And I'm great. I feel very lucky that you've joined us today, and that we get to work with you as well. So sleep as a performance factor. Firstly, what is sleep? Why are we talking about this? Is it not just a normal thing that everybody does?
Yeah, and it's a great way to sort of lead into it. I think the more that I've learned over the years and trying to figure out how to help people get better and help athletes perform at a higher level and things like that, like the more you learn and the more the science that you see around sleep, it truly is, I would say, as important or more important than food and water. We can't function without sleep, and what happens once those eyes close is, I don't know if I'm a big believer in magic, but it is almost magic in some ways of what our body is able to do. And I think the more you can look into certain levels of sleep and sleep, dealing with people who are having difficulties with sleep, or like I can function fine on 3 hours of sleep, and it's like you're surviving on 3 hours sleep. You're not creating an optimal quality in your overall level of function and recovery and mindset. And there's so many pieces to it. And I think the more I learn about it, the more interested I become around it. So when we connected, I thought sleep would be a great topic to sort of start with.
Yeah, for sure. So how have you educated, sorry, I should say, what kind of things have really resonated with you once delving into the education part of sleep?
Yeah, and I think it's a good way for I'll just get us to the next slide here, and just some of the things that like one of the most amazing stats I think I've read in my career was that the biggest indicator to mortality, so how long people can live, is sleep, how much you sleep. People that average 8 hours or more of sleep a night have lived up to 12 years longer than people that have less than 8 hours sleep, which is a pretty phenomenal stat in that
Amazing.
way. And some of the people, you hear the saying of like, well, I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of thing. And the joke around that is, well, you'll die sooner if you don't sleep. So you'll get there faster. So it is something that just in that, and I think the piece to recovery and mindset, hormonal control, that kind of stuff, it is in that line there, the greatest legal performance enhancing drug there is, that athletes at the highest level, they usually have really, really good sleep patterns. They take a ton of pride in that sleep and what it means and is. And I think in the world where we are now with social media and phones and computers and TVs and everything's stuck to your face all the time that's glowing, some of the science looking at that, like it can delay sleep up to 3 hours, like deep sleep, some of the stage 3 and 4 sleep, which is where that human growth hormone, where that sort of regulatory hormones in the body that help tissue recover, flush metabolics from the brain, do these things that allow us to be really more quality human beings in a way of function and cognitive skills. Consolidation of memory, like taking a short-term memory, say a skill, or you've just read something in a textbook as a student, and you want to remember that. Well, there's certain things we can chat about as we go, but just consolidating memory. The only way to consolidate memory is through sleep. And so if you think pulling an all-nighter is a great idea before exam, they've been able to prove not only is it not, but you're probably about 60% less cognitively sound than someone that actually did sleep. So just reasoning skills in an exam, if it's a multiple choice question, if you pulled an all-nighter and your brain's a scrambled egg, you're probably having a tough time on figuring out what, even just trying to wrap your head around these 4 options. You might make a better choice even if you didn't know the answer, just because you got a night's sleep. So concreting those memories, and they some of these more performance skills, like again, just looking at that 30% faster failure rates for athletes that slept 6 hours or less. Like 30% is a massive number. Like 10% is a big number, but 30 is incredible. Some of the lung capacity work that they've done with, like, you can't expire as much CO2 and you can't pull in as much oxygen, which the two of those together are pretty crucial as an athlete. So motor skill learning, and this one was quite amazing, like athletes that were greater than 8 hours sleep after learning a new skill or practicing a new skill introduced by a coach or a therapist in a rehab setting, they were actually learning the skill 20 to 30% faster than someone that had less than 8 hours. Like, it's
That's
like,
huge.
holy smokes,
That's
it's
huge.
incredible.
Yeah.
And then looking at lack of sleep in the disease world, it's a proven fact that disease rates are significantly higher in people who have limited sleep quality and limited sleep practices. Things like Alzheimer's, they're finding they're leading because the way that the brain is able to sort of recover through sleep, if you don't have those lengths of sleep, the plaquing that occurs in diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia, they're increased because the brain doesn't have a chance to flush some of those metabolics that are there. And when they look at brains on scans that are dealing with these diseases, they're finding these plaques and tangles. And some of the concussion work that's on right now with looking at sleep and the old school idea around managing concussion, around we got to wake everybody up every 2 hours to make sure they're still okay. And they've been almost showing now that it's detrimental to wake up someone as long as they're breathing and everything looks good that way. Let them sleep, let that brain heal, let them have rest. There's so much to say in that way. Obesity, like to think about. It's like, really, you don't sleep as much? So obesity, the numbers in obesity, it's extremely high because of the way that the body works. Limited with sleep, we have significant more cravings, but cravings to poor quality foods, high sugar foods, things like that. So there's so many dynamics. I think, again, a conversation like this could go on for days and days and days, but it's one that I think today we can touch on some things where just some of the numbers and the level that the numbers are is so high that the more that I've looked at this, I've bought myself, and we can talk about it too, but like some sleep monitor type things. I want to know how I'm sleeping. I want that 8-hour number, like at least. And so planning to make ourselves better by doing these things is so valuable.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people on this call today will want to really delve into that performance side of things. And 20 to 30%. I mean, if you're if you're at the start line of a race or in the changing rooms of a soccer game and somebody asked you that,
yeah,
do you want to improve 20, 30%? You'd bite their hand off.
Totally. Yeah. And that's the part to me that, and it's not like we're asking them to do something astronomically difficult. And so it can be hard for people who haven't been great sleepers, but it is also something that is very trainable. And we'll talk about some strategies today. And there's so many things to it that, again, the simplicity of sleep, it can be just a dark room, a mask, a mattress that's not a 33-year-old canoe that you're laying in the middle of it. Things like that can go a long way. But this slide was a neat one. I'm a big NFL geek because I think they're some of the biggest freaks on the planet in the sense of physicality. But the year they won the Super Bowl, they had a sleep coach come in and help the athletes because they felt that sleep could be one of the biggest weapons they could have. And they had some of their athletes sleeping between 10 and 14 hours a day. And they had the least amount of injuries they have ever had as a team. They won their first Super Bowl. They had never won one previously. And so when you're looking at the highest level of sport, where you're looking at a $7 billion industry called the NFL, it's a pretty amazing tool that they're using at every level of sport. It's not just something that this Abe guy in Nanaimo is trying to promote. It's a big deal everywhere kind of thing. So
we're effectively seeing our training methods evolve with this new research coming to light, right? Because
totally.
it used to be the days of you get up, get the athletes up at whatever ridiculous amount in the morning because they're the ones that are going to pressure makes diamonds type of thing. Yeah. And then you want to be the last one coming off the field on the night. So we're kind of coming away from that with this new knowledge, right?
Definitely. And I think now with technology, like there's so many values to technology too, but looking at some of the resources athletes can use to monitor those things, or anyone can monitor it, but to actually see the effects of some things that can have a huge bearing on the quality of sleep and things that model is becoming huge. Like you and I, we were chatting a little bit and saying like some school times now, they're actually starting to change the start of school because young growing humans, they need sleep. And if your school starts at 7:30 in the morning and mom and dad are pulling you out of bed at 6 and you're 12 years old, well, you're impacting brain development, soft tissue development. There's a lot of things that you may be altering. And so they've even got to the point of, some countries have implemented later start times just to improve that sleep. So yeah, you're so right. And the athlete that gets up at 4 to work out before they go to work or something like that, or go to school, it's they might be finding it's actually more detrimental than good. And so there's some neat things that are ever evolving.
So I can see we're getting into
and I'm just kind
more of the kind of what goes on in sleep, right? People just think you just pass out and that's it. Where in fact there's a whole process that we're still digging into, right? As a
totally.
race.
Yeah. And I think with some of those numbers we've chatted about already, like when you see numbers like that, the amount of coaches, athletes, money, professional teams, that kind of thing, starting to look at like, wow, this is something that we should spend money on and we should do more research in and from a health aspect of things, it's so important. Like, with patients, like asking them questions, like they're just this chronic problem pain patient, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, we've hit 100 different things, but how do you sleep? And I'm the worst sleeper on earth. I might get an hour and wake up for 2 and sleep for 1 and grab 3 more hours awake. It's like, that's the issue. We got to fix that for you to heal. And you start wrapping your head around that. But yeah, there's so many underlying things that go on once the body's closed the eyeballs that it makes such a difference in what wakes up in the morning, sort of thing. Just, yeah, the way that the body is such a complex machine that if we can give it a time to settle down once the eyes are closed, what you wake up with is a better piece of machinery for sure. This was actually a really neat slide. It was looking at some of the top athletes in the world in their specific sports and their time of sleep. And like you see guys like LeBron James or Roger Federer, like looking 12 hours, 11 hours, 12 hours a day of sleep. And you'll see a name in the middle there with 4 to 5 hours sleep called Tiger Woods. And what they're looking at with Tiger's battle of injury to the level of where he was gone at his prime because of his back and that. And some docs and some people are talking a little bit about the fact that maybe that he didn't sleep as well. So he didn't have this ability to heal as well as maybe someone like Roger Federer, who's been a top 5 player on the planet for 15 years of his career. And the longest he's ever been out for is 10 days with an injury until recently. And so there's so many different you can link one person to another. It doesn't give you a great amount of data, but it is something that gives you a little bit of a wow, because Roger Federer has at least doubled Tiger Woods' sleep. And if you ask me, Roger Federer plays a lot more explosive sport than Tiger Woods does in the demand on your body. And so those kinds of things are pretty amazing. And just the different gamut of athletes you see there, it's all different demand sports. There's endurance sports, there's explosive sports. So it's, it was just a pretty neat way to look at what these pro athletes in their daily average of hours of sleep are getting. But most athletes there, except Tiger, are at least 8 hours. Every single athlete in that picture, and that's just night sleep as well. It's not including nap sleep. So there's definitely some of them are getting a lot of hours with their eyes closed to be able to do what they do.
Yeah.
These are things that I think some people may say, hey, you know what? I am number 4. I get sick and my illness stays for too long. That I just want to touch on a little bit with what are some indicators of how I could be lacking sleep, or I'm dealing with these things, and maybe if I can fix my sleep patterns, this could be part of getting myself feeling better. But in a student sense, I think they definitely have that concentration component to their life where studying and reading has such a bearing on their quality of learning. And so some of those things where it's like I'm struggling on exams, I can't absorb the knowledge. I would maybe have a peek at, over the last month, how have you slept? Recovering from training, and I don't even mean in the sense of like broken down injury recovery, but it's like I trained last night, a medium practice, and I am dragging my butt the next day, kind of thing. That could have something to do with the fact the night before, after a harder medium session, you didn't sleep very well, or it was something I was up too late because I studied, or something like that. The amount of emotional ties to sleep and some of the depression things and some of those are significantly affecting kind of the quality of life for a lot of people who don't sleep. It's when you look at hormonal quality in the brain, when we sleep longer periods, dopamine and serotonin, some of these happy hormones that we have, they're lower. And when you have lower happy hormones, the other ones that are around, because your increased stress levels and things like that, can really affect your sort of everyday attitude about things. There's some neat things around looking at athletes who make these decisions in a game or in a play where it's like, it's a terrible pass, or it's a like, what the heck was I thinking? And they're finding fatigue has a lot to do with that mental sort of capacity in that moment of like, as the fourth quarter of a basketball game, and I made 3 terrible plays in a row. And then I looked back and I had 2 or 3 nights of terrible sleep, and then I would never make those plays normally. And so it's quite interesting. immunity in the human body right now, dealing with what we have in the world with COVID. Like, one of the biggest immune building machines the human body has is sleep. So if there's something floating around out in our world right now that a good immune system can beat, or at least if you've got a really good opportunity to beat it and get rid of it, sleep could have a huge factor in that. Weight, again, obesity, and just struggling with weight. I think in an athletic setting too, there are some sports where a certain body type is optimal and best case scenario. And if the athlete's really struggling with their weight, you can see the stress of them trying to get to that weight. It's creating a bad quality sleep environment for them. That could be the reason. And if we could create a better scenario that way, now all of a sudden that weight may be more achievable, or geez, this extra 5 pounds that just never seems to want to leave me is gone now because I'm using insulin levels better. I'm driving hormones properly in my body because I'm getting good sleep. And I think the last one is just one of these ones where with workouts, just your gaps between workouts are getting longer and longer because you just feel like you can't produce a good workout anymore because you're tired, and the body isn't feeling like it would normally be energized and excited to work out, especially at a high level athlete world of things. I feel like that energy piece is a big one.
Yeah, the weight and the immune one, it really sticks out to me as very interesting. And is that very much a chemical breakdown happening there that supports these hypotheses?
Yeah, and when you look at just what happens with sleep, like it doesn't just be muscle recovery. It can be hormonal state of like pancreas with insulin levels, things like that generate blood sugar control, pieces like that. If you have inflammatory conditions, inflammation is regulated with sleep, things like that. So they build on each other. Like if you're a high trained, highly functional athlete that's beating your body up all the time, you have a lot of inflammatory components to that, a lot of metabolics in the tissue that if you're not sleeping at a high enough level or a good enough level to flush that out of your tissue, well, you're running at a higher inflamed state. And inflammation in tissue doesn't create an optimal environment for quality. And so those are the things that are out there. And a lot of the cells that recognize viruses and bacteria in the body, T cells are these guys that go through us and kind of our little military that go in and clean up the junk. If we don't sleep enough, those T cells, we don't have as many, and the quality of them isn't as good. So that's where infection and things like that can be a little more way more susceptible to getting them. So heart disease is another one. Sleep is so paramount for heart quality because our heart actually gets a chance to slow down a little bit with sleep. So if we're sleeping 3 hours a night and don't have that poor heart of ours able to sort of settle down a little bit, there's some overuse, things like that too.
Mm-hmm.
This is one. This guy's a pretty amazing piece of machinery, but just looking at sleep and performance and some of the aspects of what it can do for what can we get out of getting good sleeps, and the improved reaction times. There's some amazing science looking at that. There was a study done on what can a single all-nighter do for reaction time. And a single all-nighter, university athlete pulling it because they slacked a bit on some study and they got a big test the next day. And the reaction times on average after one single all-nighter were 300 times less than having a test done with 8 hours of greater sleep. 300 times. So there was one too that showed that 22 hours awake in a row is equivalent to having 4 alcoholic drinks on reaction time. So I don't know how good you run on 4 drinks, but I wouldn't be great. And in sports too, with high reaction time requirements, 4 drinks definitely will limit that. But 22 hours isn't that long, and to have that level and effect of something like a reaction time, it's an incredible number again to look in that way. Injury rates, what they found too, there was a study done on high school aged athletes looking at injury rates, and they found that athletes that had fewer than 6 hours sleep in a night had a higher susceptibility to injury the following day, and were the biggest predictor of injury was sleep time. So even more than practice hours. So you may have a university athlete that's practicing 12 hours a week. That was a bigger indicator to injury, was sleep versus time doing their sport. So it was really, again, an interesting one for these athletes that are putting huge amount of hours in training. If you lack sleep, you're having a way higher susceptibility to getting hurt. And they're tying that to, is that because your reaction time was decreased? So in a soccer setting, you went in for a tackle, you went in not as fast as you normally would, or not as hard as you normally would, and you blew up your ankle, or you did in your hip, or whatever it was. There's some thought around with decreased sleep and immune system compromise. So now our body's in a poor state to be able to handle external load and external viruses and bacteria and that, and then it leads into the whole recovery piece. If you're not recovering well because you're limiting your sleep and your training hours are what they are, there's another aspect to that can really lead to why am I not getting to where I need to be in my training. But really interesting, like that was a big one for me. Just looking at training hours didn't have the same effect on injury as decreased sleep levels. Playing careers is a really interesting one. If you get into like that high performance athlete that can bring in $15 to $40 million a year, if I can increase their playing careers and just tell them to sleep longer, that's a pretty big paycheck in a big way. And I think a lot of this all linked to high performance, just because the fact that the biggest money in the world almost goes into that stuff. But in anyone, like I would love to play a sport at any level longer because my body lets me, versus being broken at 31 and can't do anything anymore. Like that to me is a sad part of life. You see those people out there that are 75 and still thriving and enjoying their life and doing things like that. But sleep has a big factor on how long someone can function at a better level. Looking at accuracy and sprint times, there was some studies done down in the US looking at accuracy, and they found, this was a basketball study that they looked at, but with 8 hours of sleep, there was a 9% increase in free throw percentage and a 9.2% increase in 3-point shooting after 2 weeks of sleep. 2 weeks of just sleeping 8 hours a night, and they increased that quality of shot. Like if you were able to do that to an NBA player, that would take them from like an average shooter to one of the best shooters in the world. So like when you're playing around with 10% numbers at a high level, and that was just a 2-week time frame of enforcing that for just an 8-hour sleep block. Sprint times too were another one they looked at. They did a study where they looked at a month of athletes where it was just sleep how you were, and then they charted their sprint times, and then they said, okay, the next month what we're going to do is if you didn't sleep greater than 8 hours, you're not going to sprint that day. And then the athletes that slept 8 hours or greater had faster sprint times that second month than they did. And then they took a month off because they wanted to see, was it just the fact that they had a fatigue state from the first month? And it was like, not at all. It was like they came out of the sleep study every time with faster times than groups who slept less. Again, the mental hour piece is pretty self-explanatory. If your brain's in a state where you're fatigued, your focus, memory, learning skills, there's an impairment to them. And so mental errors are easy to make. And I think that's where sometimes they can be made later in games as well, or later in events, because we're fatiguing physically, plus we've come in with a bit of a fatigue state mentally because of lack of sleep. I think, again, the more that you look at some of this stuff, it's all based on closing those eyes for a length of time. And the magic number from everything that I've pulled out and looked at over the last few years here with it, and the importance of it, is that 8 hour is your magic. If you can get more than that, great, but that's kind of the number. And it's even to the point where, and scientists are pretty sticklers on a number's a number, but this interviewer I heard talking to one sleep specialist, and he was saying like, well, what if I sleep 7.5? And the scientist was like, it's not 8. And he said, well, I know, but it's close. And he's like, it's not, because a half an hour of deep sleep is magical stuff going on in your body. And if you've cut that off because you got up in 7.5, it isn't the same. So it is one to really strive for, that 8 hours in all aspects of trying to get that sleep. And the term sleep debt, I didn't do much with it on here, but sleep debt is this, okay, well, I've been up for 4 days, so I'm going to have this really massive sleep. I'm going to sleep for 18 hours. And what they've been able to show, actually, you can't make up for certain sleep debt. Like once you get to a certain number, it's really difficult to try to catch up. Like over 2 weeks and good sleep quality, you're going to get back to feeling good. But you can have a mindset of like, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday nights, I stay up till 4 a.m. and then, but Fridays and Saturdays, I sleep for till noon the next day. It doesn't have the same effect on the body and what it's doing. So those are ones where sleep debt's kind of this thing where you think you can catch up, but it takes a long time for the body to make up for lots of nights of missed sleep. This is just Team USA basketball on the plane. They've tried to find as many ways as possible at their level to catch some sleep, but this is them going to Barcelona for the Olympics. Yeah. But these are ones that, again, I think we can chat about in a fairly quick but super beneficial way, that just how to create a sleep environment. And it's not the most difficult thing in the world. A bed is a nice thing, and most people where we live, we're lucky enough to have a bed and sheets and some blankets and that kind of thing. But your sleep environment should be cool. 18 degrees is roughly the recommended perfect temperature. If you've ever noticed, it's a lot easier to, in the winter, throw an extra blanket on and get to sleep than it is on a hot, sticky summer night, because the body has to cool to fall asleep. And so in that sleep environment, if you have this heater in your room and your room's 24 degrees, it's a proven fact, there's a longer latency of time to get to sleep. So if we can have a cooler room scenario, you're in a good place there. Noise is a huge one. Earplugs are, if you live in an area where there's traffic or there's random sounds, like white noise is actually quite therapeutic for sleep. They're finding even some of the deeper sleep lasts longer if you have a white noise type of a thing. But if it's a siren or things that are just super random through the night, they can change your depth of sleep. An earplug can be valuable that way. Darkness is truly how our brain works. We've been around for about 84,000 generations, and for about 3, we've had screens and fake light that isn't created by the sun. And so darkness is how the body and our DNA has been invented for us for however long we've been around. And so these ideas around like just having non-sunlight, creating darkness is huge. Melatonin release, which is the sleep hormone that we have that sort of dictates depth of sleep, is one of the, darkness will stimulate melatonin release. In a perfect world, in a perfect circadian rhythm, your melatonin should be at its very highest when your eyeballs shut, and through the night you should burn it out, and when your eyes wake up it should be at its lowest. And so the sad thing is, I think a lot of people stay up super late, and so their melatonin's all over the map. It looks like a roller coaster. So they're more tired at 1 in the afternoon than they are at 10:30 at night, kind of thing. So those are ones that are big. So a sleep mask. There are some neat science around sleep masks, and they're easy. If you're on a plane internationally, they usually give you one. Take it home with you. It's pretty simple to put on. There are some really comfortable, a little bit more expensive ones, but they create true darkness. Like there's no external light getting through them, and the level and depth of sleep they've shown it's easier to get into level 3 and 4 sleep with true darkness. Sleep patterning routine is as big as your environment. I think you need to create a routine. So when I say routine, it's like you go to bed roughly the same time and you wake up at the same time. If anyone has a baby, they know that if you keep a good routine with a baby, sleep them well and feed them well, they're pretty happy little machines. If you break routine, they're lunatics, and it's hard on everyone. And so, but that routine is the same all the way through life. Like we're wired a certain way that if the brain knows at 10:30, 11 every night, that's when we go to sleep, and we get up at 6:30, 7. That's a routine that you start to build that rhythm within the brain. And the brain is plastic, and if we can build something in the brain that allows for it to have this cyclic routine, you're doing a lot better than someone that has this super roller coaster ride of some nights I go to bed at 8 o'clock because I'm so tired, and then other nights I'm up till 3 a.m. on a Netflix blender. Those types of sleep routines are really tough to get into some, again, the deeper layers of sleep. The electronic world now, I would say, has the biggest impact on the depth of our sleep over anything on the planet that's ever been around to impact sleep. They're showing anywhere between 60 and 90 minutes before bed. If you can shut your electronic stimulation off, you will reach deeper sleep 3 hours quicker than someone that does phone time before that 60-minute or leading into that. I'm going to close my eyes now right after 19 hours straight of Instagram. That kind of stuff really does give your brain the frying pan analogy of years ago. This is your brain on drugs. This is your brain on trying to sleep, where there's parts of your brain that don't even really understand what you're doing besides staring at something that stimulates portions of the brain that have never been stimulated except for the last 3 generations. Artificial light too that comes from glowing screens is so different than natural light. Like the wavelength is completely different. So again, it really does affect the pineal gland that releases growth hormone and melatonin and things like this that are so valuable for sleep quality. With our team at VIU, I make a sort of, this is our policy. When we get back to the room an hour before bed, our phones are off, and we're going to respect our roommates and everybody's phone's off. And it takes a little bit for them to get into it because they feel like they could miss some amazing posts, but after a while they really do realize it's a lot easier to get to sleep and they feel more rested, and it makes such a big difference in that. Stimulants, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Hammering a coffee 2 hours before bed is a really bad idea. Some athletes I know, they like their evening workout. An evening workout is enough of a stimulant to try to put you to sleep, but if you're taking any kind of a pre-workout or something like that that is full of 5 to 50 stimulants, trying to go to bed after that, you'll stare at your ceiling till 3 a.m. wondering why you can't get to sleep. And it's a really difficult piece to the brain too, because you have these signals constantly, or these neurotransmitters that are trying to do their thing on one end to get you to sleep, and then you have the heightened ones on the other side that caffeine stimulates, and so it's this tug of war between fatigue state and stimulant state, which leads to really poor light sleep that doesn't give you the value of what you would want. Some people too, I think the fluids and food before bed, there's an easy kind of 2 hour window, 2 to 3 hour window where I'd recommend trying to shut down any of that. The last thing you need is a big gut full of food before bed, and your body's trying to process food while you're sleeping. It definitely affects the level of sleep you can get to because it's still working while you're asleep. And fluids, consistency in sleep is big because you need to be asleep for roughly about 3 hours before you'll reach some of these deeper levels of sleep. And getting up 4 times to go pee, well, you can't find 3 hours of consistency in that. So it's one that's decreasing fluid levels 2 to 3 hours before bed will let you have probably a good pee before bed, and then you can close your eyes, and the next time you need to pee will hopefully be when you wake up, and it's called morning. The last one there, just the short bath or shower, what they've been able to show with that is if you can have, and it doesn't have to be long at all, but like I had mentioned, that core cooling before bed, or trying to get to that cooler room environment. What they showed with a warm or hot shower or bath for a short time, because it's hot, you'll pull blood from your core into your extremities. Therefore, it's a quicker cooling once you get out of the shower, because you don't have, like, just sitting on the couch, your extremities don't have a ton of blood flow in them. So it's a lot of blood flow inside your core temp, which again, to get to sleep, you have to have a lower core temperature. So if you can have a short warm bath, warm shower, pull the blood into your legs and arms, and then crawl into bed, you have a quicker opportunity of falling to sleep. some of the studies are showing like anywhere between, I think it was 12 and 20 minutes faster to sleep just by doing a 5-minute, hot shower. And in travel, like I'll say again, we're pretty lucky where we live and where we travel in North America anyways, where hotels have showers, houses have showers. Those things are pretty easy for an athlete that is already heightened and stimulated after a match or after something in the evening. That can be a good one. Epsom salt, magnesium-based Epsom salts too can be a nice one to throw in the bath. Magnesium has a good effect on sleep, for muscle relaxation and things like that. So those can be added to a bath if people wanted. Even the feeling of warmth, they're showing that it feels nice. It's cozy. It's relaxing. If you're kind of at a heightened holy crap mode, it's a nice way to just breathe and chill out in the shower for 5 minutes and get some of the benefits of like we just chatted about. So those are things that, are all fairly easy, doable pieces to strategizing sleep.
Yeah, I think I would advise if you can just go back to that, Abe, please. Sorry to interrupt, but if there's student athletes out there or people who really want to adjust their performance, enhance their performance, take a picture of that slide, because I also read that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Abe, that going into a hotel or a different environment already heightens and stimulates your state when you're going to sleep. So you're already on an uphill battle when it comes to sleep. So creating this environment and this routine when you're on the road, like a lot of athletes and coaches are, has got to be high priority for performance.
Totally. And some of that, like it's an amazing number too, that because again, we've been hunter-gatherers way more than we've been humans that have houses and beds and video games and all these kinds of things. So the way that our genetic DNA is that when we sleep in a foreign environment, like a hotel, it takes a while for your body to trust where you sleep. And they think they've linked it back to sort of the caveman days where if you're in your safe environment, you sleep deeper, you sleep faster, you sleep longer, where if you sleep because you went on a hunt and you're trying to find somewhere to crash for the night, they've shown in foreign sleep environments that you get about 50% of the depth of sleep you would normally get. So most road trips, we're in a different sleep environment. So creating as many of these as you can to at least mitigate some of that, it's incredibly valuable. Like you're giving yourself a chance at a performance state to benefit significantly. So, and a lot of them, again, I feel are super easy, and in a team sport environment too, where you may share a room with 2-3 other athletes. It's like, you got to be a teammate in that way too. Like everybody's got to buy in. Like if you got the moron beside you on the phone and you can't get to sleep because they're playing all night, it's like, that's a terrible teammate in that way, sort of thing. So I find that buy-in for athletes is really great, because you give them this information on how important sleep is and say, hey guys, like, let's crash. We need to get to bed, and we need to be able to perform really well tomorrow. So those things are really, really crucial. This is, I think napping's one of these things where there's a huge amount of value. There's a book by a Harvard PhD called Take a Nap. It's a little small, easiest read ever, but phenomenally done. This woman who wrote it, again, when you get your PhD from Harvard, you're pretty bright, but she has so many neat concepts and science around the benefit of napping. And there's cultures that have napped for millions or at least thousands of years, because there's a little blip in a circadian rhythm in the early mid-afternoon where humans for millions or thousands of years used to, because the higher temperature time in the day, it was too hot to hunt, it was too hard to farm, it was too hot to do this, so they had these naps. And so it's built into, again, our DNA. And so what they found was, though, if you can nap for 1 hour before 3 o'clock, it should have minimal to zero effect, and in some cases a positive effect on your night sleep. But as soon as you turn that hour into 2 hours, and it's from 3:30 till 6, or 3:30 to 4:30 or whatever it is, now you're going to impact your rhythm later in the night. So sleeping too long and too late in the afternoon can really neglect what you're going to get out of your night sleep. But they found a 45-minute nap for performance is extremely valuable. But you need to set the alarm, because once you wake up or the alarm goes off in 45 minutes, you're really feeling like, no, man, I am tired still. I'm going to hit snooze and we'll see how it goes. And then 2 more hours goes by, and now I guarantee you don't sleep that great that night. So it's one of those ones that the value is those sort of numbers right there, is before 3 and max 1 hour. The busy bedtime brain, I have this, my brain doesn't seem to ever want to shut up, but the idea is simple. It was a sports psych that one of the national team athletes was dealing with, because he was just struggling to sleep at night, because he's just like this high energy, high level athlete. So what he had him do was just have a pad of paper beside the bed. And it was like, when you get this thing in your head, just write down what it is and just say, okay, I'll deal with it tomorrow. And the difference it made for him, he said, for the simplicity of that, was unbelievable, because he just got it out of his head. And by putting it on paper in the morning, like he said, he used to, when he started doing it, he'd have 2 sides of this paper full. And then it was like, now it was a side and a half, and now it was 1 side. And then
Right.
he got to the point where I was like, you know what? I didn't even need it anymore. But the value in that, because if you're just going to analyze life before you want to close your eyes, it can be a tough one, again, to really shut her down and get some good sleep. And it's just a nice, almost relaxation for the brain to understand that, okay, you know what? Yeah, we can deal with it tomorrow, because we're not going to solve the world right now. So that was kind of a cool, little simple way to help that crazy busy brain. Even before competition, I've had athletes that I would say, like, just write 3 things tomorrow you're going to do well, and then try to get to sleep. Like, you can't do anything right now. So those can be very helpful, and just an easier way to, again, just calm down the cortisol, let the stress hormone settle down a bit, and hopefully get you to sleep a little quicker. And I think this is, oh yeah, we just had talked about this, Kev, some of the sleep monitoring that's out there. Again,
Right.
with technology, we've got lots of kind of cool things that are out there. Whoop, the top one there, as a sleep tracker. It's a wristband that's worn 24 hours a day, and it's become scientifically too. They've done a lot of research in the last couple of years on it, and it's the most widely used high performance strap now for sleep monitoring and recovery and it is fairly expensive, though. I think it's anywhere between $24 and $30 a month American to use it, but phenomenal data comes from it. And their one study was a comparison study looking at their data versus like true sleep lab data, and they were very, very close to what the sleep labs were having. Like, there was a little more depth to it in the sleep lab, but comparatively, like, Rory McIlroy is a big promoter of these. LeBron James wears them. Kobe Bryant was wearing them. Like, there's a lot of the elite that are wearing them to get that benefit of what we're dealing with in that way. Some of the other ones, Fitbits, you can find a Fitbit. London Drugs has them even. They do okay. Like the new Fitbit Versa 2, some of the science coming out of that lab, it's tracking sleep quite well. I think as long as you can get a basic number of, I slept for 3 hours or I slept for 10 hours, you're going to get some idea around what's going on. The neat thing with Whoop, actually, it's this showing what alcohol does in sleep is pretty incredible. Like, you can see, like, you in some cases you don't even reach deep sleep because of alcohol. So that was one. Whoop's quality of sleep science is pretty neat in there. And then there's some that they do okay. I think I don't totally know how they work, where you can just put an app on your phone and lay your phone beside your head and it's going to track your sleep levels. I think it can track your hours of sleep okay, but it's actually, some of them are saying that they're able to track the levels of sleep, and there's some stuff around, I've heard, from breath rates and things like that is how they're trying to do it. But again, if it can give you just a basic idea around how many minutes you're getting to sleep, I think there's value in that, and just seeing the results of it. 2 nights of good sleep isn't going to change the world, but 30 in a row or 30 out of 34, that can, it's exciting, I think, for people that start to get good sleep.
Most definitely.
I think, yeah.
You've referred to the sleep stages or levels.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by that, and why are they important?
Totally. So a level 1 sleep is just pretty much my eyes are closed. It's almost like just reaching subconscious. There is not a huge amount of recovery in it, but you got to get to stage 1 before you can get to 2, 3, and 4. Stage 2 is sort of an in-between stage that again the body starts to get into those deeper levels, and stage 2 is one where they're looking at a little bit right now, finding on the memory piece, like consolidating memory. It's the start of that. It's kind of like if you think about a filing cabinet, it's like the time where these memories are getting taken out of the short term, and as we get into the deeper, we're going to put her into the hard drive. And then level 3 sleep is your REM sleep, your dream sleep, where you're getting that activity in the brain, but also a lot of hormonal change. Your cortisol levels are decreased, heart rate changes, breath rates changes. And then deep sleep is your level 4 sleep, where that's where you're getting into your human growth hormone, your very recovery sleep. If you can get an hour and a half, like Rory McIlroy, he was talking recently, I was listening to him on a podcast, he got just about 2 hours of deep sleep before he shot the best, or he said played the best round of his life. And to get 2 hours of deep sleep, that is incredible. So what the science is showing, if you can get in the hour to hour and a half level of deep sleep, it's difficult. And that's where all those little things we've chatted about already really assist keeping that deep sleep. Because you may get 7 minutes of deep sleep at midnight, you might get 14 minutes at 2:30, and then you might get 42 minutes at 3 a.m. Like, it's not just I go 1, 2, 3, 4. It's this cyclic, really interesting sort of waves of sleep. But your 3, 4 levels are your guys where the body becomes, this is where I'm at my maximum recovery, maximum sort of therapeutic value of sleep. And they take longer to get to, which makes sense. They're, again, the later stages of sleep, but that's kind of the most basic way I would say is those 4 levels of sleep.
And I guess, so the routine is you really want to try and engage all of them levels, right? I mean, you're doing your best not to skip or cheat yourself out of any of those levels.
Totally. And like I say, with the deeper levels, you have to go through 1 and 2 to get to them. So it's like, if you're just this level 1, 2 sleeper all night long, well, you're never getting into any of the real therapeutic beneficial levels of sleep. So it truly is one of those ones where it's such a complex thing that goes on in us, but it's such a, like, it's a pretty low demand thing to do. Like to go to bed at a good time and create a good sleep environment and clean your room up, because even clutter doesn't add to sleep quality. Like there's lots of components that we can play with so simply outside of before we go to sleep.
Are there any questions out there right now? You know, I've got a ton swirling around, and you know, I could talk about this with you, Abe, for the whole night, but I want to throw it out there to anybody. So if you've got a question, feel free to unmute and put your camera on and ask us and join the conversation, or you can send us a message if you're more comfortable with that. So if there's any questions out there, please feel free to fire them. You can direct them to the group or me, or however you want to do it.
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
Normally, like, yes, sleep's important, and then it becomes like, as a runner, you got race day, and there's all the nerves. Say if it could be, you know, volleyball, basketball, hockey, whatever. You got your game day. Your sleep the night before tends to not be as great before your big performance. So I've been told that as long as you're sleeping well up until that point, the one night before your performance isn't quite as big of a deal. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say you still would love to keep your routine on your race night. And I understand, like, knowing you, Aaron, sometimes it's like the race starts at 7. So it's like you can't sleep till any later than 4:30. But in that, the lead up is so crucial. Like, you're definitely going to have quality, and then, okay, it is one bad night, it's or medium night, it it still will affect you. Like if you could rock a great sleep that night before, your body's in a better state to perform. But I also totally understand in that. Like that's why I think a lot of the elite level sports, they are starting them at later times. Like you don't see the NHL having a game at 7:30 in the morning. And so, but I think in your world of like longer distance, it's such a long piece that you can't start it at, or you could maybe, but at 3 in the afternoon, it's pretty hot and sometimes, and those kinds of things. But yeah, your cumulative quality leading in is going to have way more effect than your one night before the event. But again, I think routine, the brain's a pretty cool machine. Like if you've had a lot of good routine leading into your race, your chances of sleeping that night before the race are probably higher than somebody that's just, again, the roller coaster going into it. So, but no, it's a great question. You definitely, nerves play a huge role in sleep because you're going to be fired up the night before.
I guess as well, from a coaching perspective, Abe, we can kind of take that information on board and think, what are our players, what are our athletes going through the night before, and how can we help them? Can we give them some more information or some way that they can control some anxiety?
Yeah, definitely. I think even just breathing techniques, things like that, like a really sort of basic what's the word for it? Like a non-difficult, like bit of yoga or just something to try to take your brain away from it, where you can think about something different than like, oh man, tomorrow's the gold medal match. We win it, we're going to nationals. We lose it, we're done. That's a hard one if you're rolling around in bed thinking of that. And again, it's another probably chat, but like breath work and the science around breath work and just trying to settle down a lot of these sympathetic nervous system. It's so if you can do things like that, it can make a huge difference in getting to sleep. But you're right, Kev. Those kind of things are huge to just the knowledge of it. Just this stuff too a lot of this is simple to implement, and just knowing it is the part to it.
Because I know in team sports, some coaches prefer to tell their athletes if they're going to be starting the field or not days before because of this. So they're not up, they're not, they at least know. And if it's not the news they wanted to hear, at least they can come to terms with it.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. And I think that's where knowing your athletes one-to-one, like I've had athletes in the past that they're like, Abe, I don't want to know till you put the lineup in. Cause I just overhype myself. Like I just get too in my head. And then other athletes are like, no, man, that lets me get a solid mindset that I know I'm going to start. And I want that feeling. So yeah, it's again, I think knowing your athletes from a team to an individual aspect that can be really helpful. And if you can know them well enough that, hey, this athlete needs to know they're going to start tomorrow. So, hey, Chris, let's chat quick. I'm going to start you tomorrow. And Chris goes to bed feeling good about it, versus the Mike who, if you tell him he's going to start, he just pooped his pants and he's going to be up all night because his brain's exploding. So understanding, your athlete in so many dynamics is huge that way, but a great way to help understand what you're dealing with before the most important part of their day of sleep.
Just a comment from Darren. Thanks, Darren. He mentioned that he doesn't sleep in a dark room. He uses the daylight. So he gets up with the daylight, gets himself out on a bike ride. He likes the idea of going to bed when it's dark out and getting up when it's light out. I guess, again, adhering to that primal instinct we have.
Yeah, the only thing I would say with that, because of where we live, if you're an equator human that lives there where the sun time is very similar all the time. Right now, though, like in a month from now, the sun's going to go down at about 10 o'clock and it's going to come up at about just after 5. So you right there only have 7 hours of kind of darkness. Like you maybe have 5 hours, whereas in December, sun's down at 5 and not up till 7. So like you're kind of being Dracula half the year and somebody that's up like limiting sleep. It's a great routine, but I would say the best routine is trying to find a time that I like to be in bed by 10:30 and I like to be up by 6:30 every single day, regardless of the sunlight, regardless of that, has truly been shown to be the most beneficial for sleep. Because if your sleep patterning changes from summer to winter, we're not an animal. We can control that stuff. Like we can find a way to make darkness, no matter how bright it is. Like if you were to do that and live in the Yukon, you would die in the summer, and then you would never wake up in the winter. So it's something that, again, routine is really, really crucial for sleep. But I love like getting away from fake light and just being a sun person or a dark person is really a good way to live. But yeah, just true darkness is there's a lot of kind of magic in true darkness. Just another comment too about time of sleep, like hours of sleep before midnight are worth 2 hours of sleep post midnight. So if you can go to bed at 10 to 12, that's worth 4 hours compared to going to bed at 1 to 3, because we're wired to go to sleep much before midnight. And so those hours are crucial, good hours of sleep. Just again, from primitive times, like cavemen weren't cruising around at 1 a.m. looking for dinner. They were going to bed pretty early. So it's just the depth. We can reach depth a lot quicker before midnight than after midnight.
Great, thanks, Abe. Sue's just been tapping away she's got some pointers as well. Sue's a occupational therapist and a really good friend of Pacific Sport. I don't know if you want to just type them to me, Sue, or do you want to chat?
Hey, Kevin, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Awesome. I'm outside, so sorry if the wind is there, but it's too gorgeous. Abe, thank you so much. Fantastic stuff.
My pleasure.
So yeah, I work with people in chronic pain. And I do a lot of sleep work, a different sort of focus. So I found your information similar, but fascinating because it's a little bit different. I'm also an Olympic athlete, and I've learned my first sleep technique as a 9-year-old, and it held me through a lot of the stuff I did. Interestingly, that picture of the '92 basketball team, I saw them play at the Olympics, which was super cool.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. Cool.
Lucky enough to get a ticket. Anyway, a couple tips, things that help me and things that have helped clients that I work with. More to your question, Aaron. So you mentioned some gentle movements. Yoga Nidra is quite nice. Also, doyogawithme.com has a really nice bedtime yoga. Cool. Really gentle, just kind of a joint freeing kind of thing, which can be really, really helpful. Yeah. And something called autogenics. Now, autogenics is a technique on altering your body. It's a relaxation technique, and it's incredibly helpful to help fall asleep. So that can be something that can be used to help you get to sleep as you're trying. It keeps your mind just busy enough that it doesn't quite tap into all the worrying that's happening. So that can be good.
Cool.
It's a lot, and it's rapid fire. The last thing I would want to say, especially, I do a lot about worrying with sleep and how to deal with worry and busy minds. And one of the things, because it's so prevalent, right? And one of the things that we can think of if we're worried about not sleeping the day before a game or a meet, competition, or run, is that if you're doing a meditation actually can get you into sort of a lower stage 1, almost stage 2 level of sleep. So even if you're up for a bit, if you're doing some sort of a sleep meditation or anything like that, that's going to actually mimic stage 1 and 2. So that can be helpful to not just get back to sleep, but also to get the benefits of that. So lots of stuff. And
awesome.
one last one, my favorite one, is a sleep breath. So basically you're breathing out twice as long as you breathe in. Very, very gentle. When I do it, I breathe in for about 1.5 seconds and breathe out for 3. And you keep doing that, and it gets a nice relaxing breath. In fact, I went to teach it to one of my daughters. She woke me in the night to say she couldn't sleep, and I was going to teach her this. And then by the time I got back into her room, she'd fallen asleep, and I noticed that she was actually doing that sleep breath. So we're actually training our body to get into that level of sleep, but it has to be not forced, and it has to be really gentle.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sue. Great info.
Love it. Yeah, thank you, Sue.
One thing that fascinates me, Abe, is the skill acquisition piece. Mm-hmm. And right now we're becoming masters of multitasking. You know, we can control multiple devices, computers, whilst cooking, while spinning a few plates. You know, what we're losing, and this is just my opinion. You know, I'm not a sport health scientist. What we're losing, I think, is the ability to be mindful and the ability to focus. So the idea that, you know, and I'm so excited about this new information coming out about sleep, this contemporary information. I think it's amazing that you can get in these REM and non-REM levels, and this magic, like you said, starts happening where we start to consolidate some of these skills and be able to learn them within our sleep so we can perform on a daily basis. That just blows my mind.
Totally. Yeah, I think that was one of my favorite pieces to the more that I dove into it, that part. And I'm always I love movement, and watching an elite athlete do their thing is one of the coolest things out there. But to be able to just, I know we're not all working with LeBron James and things like that, but if you can help any athlete acquire a skill 20 to 30% faster just by sleeping, like, holy smokes. And then even the cognitive side of, like, you've just decided, you know what, guys, we're going to change our game plan this weekend, and this is what it's going to be like. They will learn that skill better by sleeping that night. That game plan, like that tactical, okay, what are we going to do today, by sleeping and not staying at home and trying to read 14 pages of this national team breakdown on how we're going to stop the best scorer in the league. It's like, no, this is what we're going to do. Go to bed. And that those athletes have a chance to pick that up so much quicker. And just, again, like I said, 5% is a cool number, but like 30 is incredible.
It really makes sense how babies have to sleep, 14 to 18 hours a day, because, you know, they got to learn the ways of the world, you know, so the parents give up the sleep to create this new human.
And that's why, like, senior world, it's tragic, but they sleep 3-4 hours. It's like, we should try to keep a routine through our lives, because it has such an effect. Like, I think my first comment around mortality.
Yeah.
Sleep greater than 8 hours a night, you'll live 12 years longer than someone that doesn't. Like, that's 12 years is a long time. You can do a lot of fun things in 12 years.
Imagine how many, we can do more episodes of this.
You know it. Yeah. 12 years worth. Yeah. So no, it's an amazing topic. And I think the more that they're learning about it and the ability to sort of get the science of it, how valuable it is, and just the level of quality it can turn us into.
Do we have any more questions out there, folks? Okay, so while people maybe are just scratching their heads, yes, Abe, so you've alluded, you coached the VIU men's basketball team, doing some great things. Volleyball, doing some great things with those guys over the last couple of years. From a coach and student athlete perspective in these challenging times, how has that been for you guys?
Yeah, it's definitely been something that is unique, because no one's ever kind of lived through it or gone through it. But working with and chatting a lot with some close friends who are within national programs, and one coach who's a professional coach in Europe, just that staying a community and checking in with everyone and making sure, like, still being a team, regardless if you're in the gym or on the pitch or whatever you're doing, I think has a huge component to it. Like the mental connection piece that's gone without getting in the training environment together, I think has been really difficult for some athletes. And even for myself, like, I'd love to see the boys in the gym and do some things with them. But I think the checking in piece has been really important. Like, I remember one of our athletes, I just checked in with him a little while ago, and he just the next morning said, "Thanks, Abe. Like, it was nice to just hear from you, because I wasn't feeling too great, and just sort of built some excitement about the season and things like that coming forward." But I think that team environment and staying cohesive as a group is, as much as I bashed on technology, it's still an easy way to create a group Facebook page or a group chat or whatever it is. And right now we've just started, as of May 1st, our off-season training program. And I have every single day that we train, the guys I want you to post your workout and say one thing you're grateful for. And so, like, the other day, somebody said, week 1, day 3, I got clean socks today. And it was just made me laugh, but it was like cool to be grateful for clean socks. Yeah. And so stuff like that. I think too, we can do some things in our lives right now that we've maybe never had the time to do, and to not try to make it everything's terrible and life sucks. Try to find a positive in lots of ways to enjoy. We live in an amazing place. We're safe. We're just in a different way kind of thing right now, and kind of moving forward with a positive spin on it.
Yeah, and for coaches out there who may be listening, if you want some tips on connecting with your athletes, and feel free to shoot them our way at PacificSportVI.com, and you can email myself as well. We have a network of coaches that we do bounce ideas off. Abe and myself are coaches as well in the community, so we're happy to help. Throw some ideas your way. And if you've got some ideas yourself, send them our way too. We're always happy to hear. Abe, I know the sport health industry is kind of chomping at the bit to get at it. How does the next few weeks look for you guys?
Yeah, well, we got some excited news today from, I think, the Physio College as well. But our Chiro College, our Physio College, like our regulating bodies of the province, they gave us some policies and procedures after whatever, it's been 9 weeks. And so we're hoping we're going to review the heck out of it this weekend and get things kind of in order. And the hope is maybe like a soft run through opening with just limited numbers of patients Thursday and Friday next week. And then hopefully open up with a good routine and a safe routine. That's another thing that I would say that for sure will kind of keep the highest regard to safety and keeping patients, one, help them treatment wise, but two, making sure they're coming into an environment that's safe. And the whole, we'll learn a lot through the disinfectant policies and the different ways of things. But yeah, it's been a long haul to not be able to see people and help some people and even just chat with patients. I miss that. So, but the good news is it seems like we're on to the next part of this. And I think we've been really lucky with the island too, not having to deal with such a big, huge impact like some of the other areas in the world, that we can move on and in a good way.
Okay. And there's your contact info. Thanks for throwing that out there to everybody. Thanks for joining us all. Been good to touch base. We got episode 4 happening next week with UFC athlete Tristan Boondock Connolly, who's from the island. He's going to talk to myself about his journey from Vancouver Island to the UFC. So I'm really excited about that. I just got a message from Darren. There is something missing in the email address.
Oh, the I from Optimal. I just saw that too. So in the island Optimal.
Oh yeah.
I can't even spell my own.
Good catch,
Optimal.
Darren.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. It's just OPTIMAL.
Thanks.
I chucked that on about 7 minutes before I got on here. So hey, my spell checker didn't check me out.
Yeah. Okay. So next week we'll be doing it a little differently. I'll be sitting down with Tristan, and you can. We're going to do that via Instagram, and you'll be able to throw questions in via our Pacific Sport VI Instagram page. Abe, thanks so much. Your info and your enthusiasm is always spot on. Thank you, buddy. Happy to do it. Yeah, and you guys are a huge pillar in the community. You do great work. I can say that from a personal perspective as well. Unfortunately, I've been in there on your table trying to get fixed. But you guys rock it. So thanks so much. And hopefully we can maybe do a follow-up episode. Happy to. We love it, man. And thank you for everything. And we'll look forward to hopefully getting back to some real life here soon. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Take care. Thank you.